Is that
hyperdimension?
Is that what
Go ahead.
I've gotten some information that refers to the Elanine plasma array. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yes. This thing pops out 300,000 miles on an edge, a geometry around it, and you can see it if you go to the Coast website. In the article section, they've got a link, and I've got tons of them posted at the top of my Facebook pages. This thing pops out a tetrahedral shield. Well, that's not one of these static Hollywood CGI things where it's just sitting there. It's not a material object. It's a force field. It has to be constantly renewed.
It's an energy field. Energy field.
It's an energy field, yes. Interacting with the solar wind, which made it visible. Because the hydrogen in the solar wind reacts with its own electrons and it generates light. So it was basically being sheathed in light emitted by hydrogen because the energy of the field was exciting the hydrogen to glow and to emit light.
Is this what
really elegant?
Is this what caused people to say that Elanine was breaking up?
Yes, because they didn't understand the dynamics looking at this video of the formation of the shield, shedding of some of the gas that it had been ejecting, which was, of course, to make it visible in the first place. And then after the 19th, it apparently shut down. There's a whole bunch of postings by credible people that the coma around it, which is that light-emitting kind of buzzball that all comets have, which is basically just light scattered off the gas being evaporated from them, that had dissipated and it become dimmer and dimmer and longer, and it was going away. That says nothing. That says nothing about the object that was emitting that gas until it decided, in the artificial model, not to. In other words, you can't physically see the object that's in the center of this thing called Elanine. It's too small.
And that's this fits exactly in with information I've gotten, which is I'm reading right here. It says the Elanine plasma array has been fully retracted and is now dormant, cloaking at 0%. That's
another way of saying what we just talked about.
Exactly.
Now,
so that's coming from even another source.
This Texan who proved by taking photographs of Elanine a week after it supposedly broke up, showing it was still there, took photographs in different filters, meaning different narrow wavelengths of light. And elements, materials, metals, nonmetals, gases, they kind of radiate what's called a spectral fingerprint, meaning that each element has a different light signature. So by looking at them with the proper instrument, you can basically decode what element you're looking at.
And don't energy frequencies do the same thing as the frequencies?
That's how it communicates. It's different energy frequencies. Yeah. Anyway, this amateur in Texas, this good old boy, this Texan, who loves big monster trucks and a whole bunch of other stuff, Jim, you'd love to talk to him. His name is, by the way, I'm doing his radio show this coming Friday. I don't know where or when yet, but it'll be posted on my Facebook pages.
Can you give his name? Can you give his name?
His name is Francis Walsh. And he has a series of YouTube videos called The Perfect Mind, where he looks into a whole bunch of stuff that most people don't even think about. Not just astronomy, but a whole bunch of other, as you know, everything is connected, Jim. So all this stuff is connected to secret societies, connected to the Nazis, connected to the paperclip, connected to the banksters. In other words, there's connection.
It's one big ball of wax.
And this guy's interested in the big ball of wax, so he calls his programs The Perfect Mind, and on some of them he talks about Elanine and his in situ observations with this robotic telescope. Anyway, he took images through various filters. In the infrared filter, the damn thing pops up another tetrahedral shield. He says it looks ice cream cone shaped because if you whack off the top of an ice cream cone or the bottom, it actually has this triangular shape. Since he's not a geometer, he relates to something he's familiar with, which is ice cream cones.
Right.
And it looks but that's the same. It's the same geometry. It's a tetrahedron described by somebody who doesn't remember what a tetrahedron is, even if they know how to pronounce it. So the next image he took was what's called H alpha, which is a bright red line very near the red end of the spectrum, so you can barely see it. The human eye sensitivity is kind of petering out way down there at 700 and some angstroms. It's the H alpha line of hydrogen. So on that image, I've actually been able to work with the image now for a few days, you see another exquisite cubical geometry inside the tetrahedral geometry, which says to me this thing is changing the field by means of an HD torsion physics technology of some kind in this object. It's not a passive rock, it's not a snowball, it's a ship of some kind, under control, falling through the solar system on a Newtonian Keplerian orbit, kind of making out like a natural body in terms of its gravity, but in fact it carries a very sophisticated technology on board, which we have seen interacting with the solar wind, and God knows what it will do when it A, lines up with the sun, and B, lines up with the inner planets and the Earth later on this fall. I'm beginning to think it may have as one of its key purposes to be able to hyperdimensionally tweak the sun's physics and prevent the catastrophe that some have foretold as is coming. And that would then narrow down the limit of people who would send us something like this. First and foremost, our own ancestors, Jim, who went through the last cycle, figured out what to do, couldn't save themselves, but have sent something to us with their technology that allows them to reach out through time and maybe save us, their great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren.
A time capsule.
A time capsule.
But doesn't this also leave Earth as a sitting duck? We're just kind of here now at the whims of whoever might send something in?
But we've always been that way, and you're forgetting we have these two secret space programs. We've got the breakaways and we've got our secret black ops guys with anti-gravity spaceships who obviously have been out, have rendezvoused. Whether they could get inside is interesting. I've heard rumors from certain people who are always talking about their inside sources. I've heard rumors that a bunch of our guys tried to break in or to basically destroy it. And I was told it was split in two by this offensive secret space program operation. The only problem with that, Jim, is Francis Walsh's images show well after that supposedly took place, nothing happened to Elenine. It's still an exquisitely interesting object, exhibiting interesting, unique geometry, and it appears to be exactly on course. So whoever was telling my source, this information was lying. Gosh, what a surprise in a war that we would have lies going on.
Yeah, I'm shocked. All right, would this have anything to do, does the name the Jupiter Crew mean anything to you? Would that have been...
I know there was that posting all over the internet from the so-called Navy captain in the Naval Space Command, who ostensibly went out to Elenine and had some posts up on a couple websites for a short while and then disappeared. Then ostensibly he came back talking about losing 2 crewmen on Jupiter, which made no sense at all unless it was an action among, between the breakaways and our guys that took place at Jupiter, because people can be somewhat imprecise at times, so I wouldn't hang him on his syntax. But I have a feeling that if he was for real, he's telling us, A, there's a war going on, B, it's heating up, and C, there's a whole bunch of really unexpected stuff that is about to happen, and both sides are trying to control it as best they can.
And that fits exactly with all of the information I have. Now my question to you is, how do we tell the good guys from the bad guys? How do we tell the Nazis from are the breakaways the good guys?
No, just the opposite. They're the Nazis.
The opposite. Oh, okay. Yeah. The breakaways are the Nazis.
Jim, what's really amazing, if you really get this HD physics down right, you can conquer the human lifespan problem. Which means we could actually be dealing with some of the original Nazis from World War II.
Well,
I'm serious.
Yeah, well, I'm serious too. I've been going around my book. You may remember my book, The Rise.
Remember Arthur Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. HD physics is magic to conventional physics and gasoline engines and nuclear power plants and, propeller-driven airplanes and all that crap we've had for decade after decade after decade because we've been under a glass ceiling. Somebody has not wanted us to graduate and use the real physics, which would allow us to maintain our lifestyle without impinging on the planet.
But what's amazing?
It's a no-brainer. It will also extend our lifetime. It would make everybody's life more meaningful because they wouldn't have to work dawn to dusk for slaves' wages. It would wreck a whole bunch of changes in society that somebody does not want to change, and so they've kept this secret from us. And Alanine comes sailing into the inner solar system, blaring the HD physics message, saying this is the way to freedom. I have a good feeling about this.
Maybe it's the cavalry coming to the rescue. Or
that's one model. But it's
cops.
like, who is behind it? I mean, look, I have evidence.
The cops are coming.
Yes, I have evidence that we've been under surveillance by some good guys from at least the late 1800s. And that those good guys, a la Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek and the Prime Directive,
they've been conditioning us.
They've not been able to directly intervene.
Right.
That doesn't say. Remember, there was one episode one night where Scotty takes control of the national grid system on a planet where they were imprisoning Kirk and McCoy and Spock in some dungeon, and he says, "Well, I can't reveal ourselves, but I sure can, and heck, scare them to death." So he rattled their cage by affecting their power supply. Yeah. Didn't we just lose power to millions of people in the American Southwest?
Yep.
Haven't we had all kinds of weird shit going on under cities, earthquakes in places that never have earthquakes simultaneously on the same latitude?
Yeah, this 7-point earthquake on the eastern seaboard.
Yep.
The thing that struck me was there were no pre-quakes. Every normal earthquake, there are some seismic activity leading up to the quake. This one just, bam, there it was.
Yep.
And
no, the whole thing, when you start looking at the actual signature, the seismic signature, it had no what are called P waves. It was just suddenly S waves. It didn't even look like an earthquake. It had the other kind of signature, and no, it was not a nuclear weapon being detonated in the tunnels. That's conventional people desperately trying to figure out what's going on when the real war is being fought with super atomic weapons, HD torsion physics technology, which brings us, of course, to Dr. Judy Wood's work.
Right.
Which is a stunning tour de force on how this technology can make literal dust out of our technology if it's unopposed, as it apparently was on the morning of 9/11.
And that's the beauty for the perpetrators, in that if you use exotic technology, largely unknown to the public, then you can put out any cockamamie cover story you want, and no one can adequately refute you.
And look at how Judy Wood has been attacked.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
There's even efforts by some to try to throw monkey wrenches between her and me. It's very bizarre. I've been able to get a lot of attention for her work, for her research. I got the book into the hands of Jesse Ventura, who went all over radio and started talking about this is the final puzzle piece, this is the answer to what happened. Not who did it, but what was used. And, of course, once you get the what, then you can begin to backtrack to the who. Because the current group of idiots we have in government are not privy to this technology. Would you give those turkeys H-bombs personally? No.
Well, listen, speaking of monkey wrench, we've got to take a break right now for the network specifications. And this is your host for tonight, your permanent, temporary, floating, itinerant host, Jim Mars. And we're having this incredible conversation with Richard Hoagland, and we're going to be right back after this. I've got a question or two I want to ask, and then we're going to start opening up for calls. So be sure and get to the chat room or use the call-in number, which I will find out here quickly. Howdy, this is Jim Mars. I'm back with you, your permanent, floating, temporary, occasional radio host here, and tonight we're having a heck of a conversation with Richard Hoagland, former NASA consultant and science guru, about the comet Alanine and the fact that it may well be something really out of the ordinary, but not the planet buster that, what did you call it, Richard? Fear porn?
Fear porn.
Fear porn is. But Richard, I got to ask you this. Is it true that there's something odd about the speed of Alanine? Has it slowed down any?
No. See, this is all disinformation. by the same crowd, I think, that's spreading the lies that it's disintegrated and has disappeared. An object under a Newtonian trajectory is basically in free fall. Its orbit is determined only by its own gravity, its mass, and the gravity, i.e. mass, of the sun. It doesn't come close to any planets, so they don't really factor in. If it's supposed to hit its marks, if it's supposed to get into alignment at this very shallow angle of 1.84 degrees to the Earth's orbit, if it's supposed to align with various inner solar system planets on specific days because of some hyperdimensional physics reason, then it has to stay on that trajectory, Jim. It's like on a predetermined railway track. And gravity will swing it around. It passed closest approach yesterday across a span of hours between the 10th and the 11th. It's now heading away from the sun. It's swooping closer to the Earth's orbit. It'll cross about 22 million miles ahead of the Earth across our bow on the 16th of October, slowing down under Newtonian Keplerian laws like any other object, unless part of its mission when it gets out at that point is to do something different. At the moment, it appears to have stayed exactly on the track that JPL and Elanine themselves calculated many, many months ago. I mean, this thing now has been 9 months in observation. There's only 2,000 observations from astronomers all over the world of its position, and you use those positional updates to chart its three-dimensional orbit, its course, and it's exactly on track. So all this disinfo, oh, it slowed down, oh, it speeded up, oh, it went to the left, oh, it went to the right, all bullpucky. You know, it's keeping on because that's one of the key aspects of its mission. It has to hit these hyperdimensional markers, and it's doing so bing, bing, bing.
Here's a question for you, Richard. Do you think Elanine is one of those EMVs as described by James Horak? Or does that ring a bell?
Not really. Look, there's one of two possibilities. Either it's our stuff, meaning the Black Ops guys with their secret program, have put this thing into an orbit to make it appear in a certain way. But see, that doesn't make sense.
No.
Because why would you do it with all the HD numbers all over it? It's like physics you're already keeping secret.
Yeah, they wouldn't need to. They wouldn't need to do something like that. If they want to cause fear and panic, they can just crack off a few more earthquakes or tidal waves.
Exactly. It doesn't fit the modus operandi. So is it the breakaways? No, they have even less desire to have most of humanity know there's somebody else intelligent out there. They're the last people that want 6 billion people to know that they exist. Because if they are found out, then the transition from the current rulers, the elites, the Illuminati, to them will not be smooth. Do you think people are going to want to really come face to face with the idea that there's a World War III and it's us against the Nazis again? No. So they have a great interest in keeping it secret. So the only guys that would be wanting to do this are kind of like, by the law of irreducible returns, our friends. Yeah. And they're announcing their friends because they're giving us the keys to the universe before they, even if it's in the form of some kind of a robot, even get here. Elanine is not trivial. In fact, I think I can make the case, as I'm going to do in California in a couple of weeks at the Awake and Aware conference in Irvine, and the date is posted on my Facebook pages. Just go to Awake and Aware, Google Awake and Aware conference, and it will take you to the website. You can get tickets still. I'm going to be laying out the very, very well-buttressed case that Elanine represents a major step function in human history. That this is, in fact, the big thing that the Mayan calendar is anticipating, which has been timed at the end of this cycle, 2011-2012, because that's when the physics is most malleable to changes that will shift the current human history curve from the downward spiral we're on. I mean, just extrapolate out what you're seeing on television every night. It's a god-awful future. Something's got to change. There has to be a game changer. This could be it. Striking at exactly the right time in the physics where people's thoughts, what they anticipate, how they expect the future to turn out, is going to be how it turns out. Which, of course, is why the other side is dumping all the fear at so many different levels. There's fear of aliens, there's fear of hangnails, there's fear of earthquakes, there's fear of Elanine, there's fear of Obama, There's fear of Perry. There's fear of the economy. There's a fear of being on the street. There's fear of the banks crashing in Europe. There's fear of deflation, inflation. There's fear all around us at all different levels, and it's all simultaneously being modulated by this physics, and it looks like something or someone has tried to intervene and maybe change the fear equation, in which case everybody who's playing the game, oh, what more can I fear about Aladdin, is buying into the sucker bet with the bad guys, and they're going to doom their own future if they stay on the fear bandwagon.
Well, yeah, but Richard, come on now. You know, you can't control happy, contented people. You have to keep them fearful so that they'll listen to you. You know, in centuries past, you know, a few millennia past, it was, you know, you fear God, and I'm God's representative, and He told me to tell you, you know, to set me up as your king and listen to what I say. And when that the printing press came along, we got a little bit smarter. You know, they've had to change their tactics, and now it's money. But then money can produce some fear, but they need more fear. So everything you just named is basically aimed towards keeping the population fearful so they can be under control.
I agree.
Okay, so what's the upside of all this?
Well, the upside is something, as Arthur Clarke said, wonderful is coming. We just don't know what it is yet. I have hints and indications that the mainstream, the more responsible parts of the mainstream, are in fact trying to prepare, and will use this as their advantage of a paradigm shift to try to move the conversation about a whole bunch of so-called real-world things rapidly in the right direction. For instance, if it becomes common knowledge that this thing is artificial, what do you think will happen to NASA and aerospace and corporations that work in those areas of industry?
Well, and you know what? Does this have anything with shutting down the space shuttle and the satellite, the space station?
Well, if we're looking at a huge paradigm shift, Jim, as you want the upside, if we're looking at a huge paradigm shift where rockets no longer are necessary because they're primitive, they're stupid, they don't work, and they kill people, and you're going to unveil real technology because you can't keep it secret because somebody from outer space is going to show people real spaceships anyway. So you have to get the jump on it, and you have to make it look like it was your plan all along. If we're facing that kind of step function, then of course you'd retire all the money-sucking programs that don't work, because why would you need them anymore?
I've got a good question here. They said, Richard, could you give us detailed to us the information that makes you believe that Aladdin is artificial? What leads you to that conclusion?
Well, the recurrence of 19.5s, which is the one kind of code number of the HD physics model. I'll just give you a few examples. Aladdin discovers this thing when it was at 19.5 magnitude. Now, that is a brightness scale where the more positive the number, the dimmer the object is. So plus 19.5 is incredibly dim. The idea that he just found this thing by accident when it was that dim with a small telescope, when he had limited time and he was just robotically running it from the other side of the world, doesn't make sense to me. When you couple it with his name and his background and who he is and some of the other connections of where the object was in the sky when he first found it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I started with an anomaly that it was found ostensibly when it was plus 19.5.